So last week I presented a bunch of kind of academic traps that we fall into, right? We use specific jargon, specific words that aren't very accessible. We talk to ourselves, inside ourselves, and get very insular in groups and don't, kind of cross-pollinate ideas with different groups and disciplines and universities and that kind of thing. And then we fall into very fundamental idea traps about what we're researching, how we're researching it, how we talk about things, that kind of thing. These certainly aren't the only ones. I think there are several other traps that we could talk about. The three that I presented are three that I dealt with in a critique discussion piece about the London Water Research Group, which is a group of academics. It came out of London in kind of like the late 90s, early 2000s, that do work on hydrohegemony and the water stuff. It's my home base, certainly I would say, for UK Middle East water work that I've been doing for the past couple of years. I love this group, fantastic people, really, really enjoy my time with them, have learned so much intellectually from them, but had the chance to do this piece on kind of, is this a problem? Are we getting too jargony, too self-referential, too constrained by certain concepts and assumptions and, focuses and ideas? So that's where those three particular traps came from. But certainly the idea of academia as an ivory tower that's not very practical to the world and are too far removed, not accessible, those kind of things. Nothing new, and also something that you can, point at and critique for a lot of other specific issues. Certainly I would welcome any of those. Comment with more ideas, post reminder videos, ask me to talk about a specific issue. There are all kinds, funding, disciplinary boundaries, actually getting the possibility of becoming an academic and living a fairly blasted elite lifestyle, quite frankly. I've got a lot of privilege, being able to be in undergrad, let alone graduate school, and those kind of things. And I thought this might be an interesting time to reflect on Ramblings, because it's been almost a year now, actually, since I started this. I started the project as something to keep me sane over the summer while I was writing my dissertation for a master's in water security at the University of East Anglia. And the idea was, so a few main purposes. One, I'm going to finally hopefully tell Mom in words that she can understand what the heck I'm doing. Right? So it's an attempt to kind of explain my basic, theories and understandings and worldviews, and intellectual academic things that I was grappling with in a way that, she could understand, and hopefully other random members of family and friends who for some reason are interested. Everyone should be interested, right? Of course, what I do is like the coolest thing ever. Anyway, it's okay if you're not really very interested, I understand. I'm not really very interested in a lot of things that my friends look at academically, so it happens. There's a reason we have multiple academics. But besides that piece, just, hello, Mom! I don't know if she still watches these anymore. We'll see whether or not she comments and says something like, of course I'm still watching Little Miss. Anyway, beyond, talking to family and friends about this and giving kind of shouts out, since they don't see me in person really very often anymore, it was the issue of trying to figure out how to engage in pop academia, something that I'm very passionate about, and something that some academics actually get yelled at for, right? I mean, you're seen as less intellectual, less academic, less proper, and your research is tainted, right, if you engage with the common man too much or something like that. So kind of public intellectuals who write a lot of, opinion pieces and whatnot, are in some academic circles seen as less academic, right? Like their research is not as rigorous and held to as high a standard. I think that in some ways, sometimes they make claims that are too bold based on, they don't really have like the data and the information to back that up. But I also think that there's a very great value, right, in making kinds of academia more accessible to people and to non-academics, right? And kind of shaping like, yes, knowledge is good. Multiple kinds of knowledge are good. How do we deal with that? So Ramblings has been a chance, I hope, for me at least, to practice this a little bit to get some feedback. It's been really interesting to see kind of which topics people stumble on most. I do have people who are like, I just had a test on this, thanks very much, or or writing an essay and have asked me to send them a few paragraphs, explaining more about the theory, and that's been really fun. That's been really great. And I'm gonna go more than 5 minutes, and y'all are just gonna have to deal with it or turn me off, because I don't want to rush this one. It's the self-reflective piece. So I would say that Ramblings has been an interesting, fun project for me. It did get me through a summer dissertation. I survived. I enjoyed it. I did another master's. Now I'm starting another dissertation. We'll see how much I actually ramble about that dissertation on Ramblings. And then certainly I would say, it's done its job in some ways in pop academia. I think I've gotten better at talking about some of these issues. I've also had some beautifully hilarious flubs. I don't tend to watch these. The rules are no editing, and that kind of thing, and unscripted. But I have the feeling that probably there are certain topics that if I watch, I don't really think that. I didn't mean that. But of course, and people are going to interpret these in all kinds of ways. I have had messages of like, no, you're wrong. That's not what so-and-so says. Great. Tell me what you think so-and-so says. Yeah, absolutely. I would say the other main goal of these have been to start discussions. And they have not, like massive YouTube discussions, 200 comments long. That's fine. I don't need to be, some major YouTube star. I'm really okay with that. But they have started interesting discussions for me, kind of via email and Facebook and that kind of thing with people, and both people that I know and people that I don't know. So whoever you are out there, I hope these are useful, whether you're watching 1 or 20 or all of them religiously, because look, it's Becca. Thank you. The world is a marvelous, really interesting place, right? Like, I couldn't have done this as an academic 100 years ago, right? Like, this kind of thing would not be possible at all. And there we go. So there's one more thing I would add to the traps in the Ivory Tower bit, right? A century ago, yes, academia was Ivory Tower, and it needed to have not been as much, but it was also true that it was not, dissemination of information was less easy, right? Like, you kind of had to come to a lecture or buy a journal, right? Because we couldn't just email the world with, congratulations, here's this theory, read it, enjoy it. It's in terms you can understand. Now, certainly the issues of jargon and inaccessibility and high membership fees to societies, of an intellectual bent and that kind of thing, very much true and could very much be, slapped for. But today, exciting things, right? Like, we do have the chance to engage in different ways and to share stuff through a lot of different media that are much more accessible and easy to disseminate and that kind of thing. So I think academia as an institution, as well as society as a whole, needs to reflect on, how we do that and the ways that we do that and, the advantages that these kind of technologies can bring to us and to other people, as well as, what's appropriate, right? And God forbid I've screwed up someone's exam because I have a different reading on a theory than their professor does or something like that, right? So with great power, done the internet, comes great responsibility. But of course, the internet doesn't have responsibility, right? Because the internet is not living, breathing, sentient thing yet. So we need to figure out, just like any other tool, how to use it. And I think that the internet and mass media and these kind of things could be a way out of some of these traps for academia, but they also could just be ways to further interest them. So, food for thought for you academics, and for you non-academics. Tell us how we can do things better, please. On one hand, it shouldn't be your job to tell us how to do our jobs better. On the other hand, if you have any ideas, we'd really appreciate it. Hopefully, eventually, we will, in fact, get our act together. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this journey so far. It's been a lot of fun. I hope it's been useful, entertaining, hilarious, something for you. I hope you've gotten some kind of value out of it. I'm really sorry if you haven't, and for God's sake, stop watching. But do, of course, be in touch with anything and everything. Truly delightful to have all of you.